The CGA Tour, a podcast unlike any other. Host, Calvin Alexander.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. As always here, I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander. The man behind the intro to the podcast is actually a man that my guest here and I know extremely well. He made the trip to Provo, Utah, so shout out to Brody Myers with the amazing voice there. But of course, tonight I'm joined by Trey Florence. You know him any better on YouTube. He's at Shadow Ready. Not covering college football on YouTube, though, but you and I both have a lot of similarities here. Intern for the Thunder, intern for Oklahoma State Athletics. We both did some announcing. I know you did some tennis announcing for Oklahoma State Athletics.
And started your whole entire radio show back in the day.
And we started the Calvin and Trey radio show. I'm Calvin.
I'm Trey.
And we're back here on another episode of the CGA Tour podcast here. We're excited, fired up here, but it's really just because we get to talk some college football here again. It's not necessarily we're fired up about the Oklahoma State season or the rest of it, but we are going to talk a lot about that and then also preview here the Baylor game as well as the rest of the season here on tonight's episode. So, Trey, with that being said here, how's it going? And what are your thoughts following that Friday night, 1 a.m. local Central Standard Time finish of Oklahoma State versus BYU in Provo?
Overall, life great. OSU games, it's always very dicey here and there. For once, though, I'm actually was surprised. Let's just say, well, first, it sucks that the game started at 9:15 our time on a Friday night. Luckily, it's, Friday night, so luckily we can actually get to watch the game. But overall, it actually felt good to watch this game because it was actually kind of back and forth, nothing too crazy, not as many mistakes, and our offense looked, at least in the beginning, it looked very much alive under Rangel's start, and it just felt like after the bye week, they kind of were like, well, we need to start turning around, and at least we kind of have. We should have won that game at the end, but we'll get into it a little bit more in the nitty-gritties and that type of stuff. But overall, I feel a little bit better being an OSU Cowboy fan now. Am I still disappointed in the season? Oh, very much so, because, you had the hype train of Allen's coming back, Ollie's coming back. Oh, boy, here we go. And then now we're 3-4. So it's just stretching thin on how it's been this year. But at least this BYU game itself, we actually showed up for once. And I would say that we were competitive most of the game, if not all of the game. So we were right there. We gave BYU a scare. That's the good news. I was scared that we weren't going to show up again because it was a night game,
Yeah, I do. I mean, a history of Oklahoma State playing on Friday nights is not fantastic. Now, it's not also long, so there's only been a couple of them, which is nice to say, and I'm with you. It's annoying that it's a late game, but at the same point, Saturdays, fortunately, neither of us have to work, so we can actually stay up and then just sleep in a little bit as we get a little bit older in our years here, but still very young. But with that being said, I'm still very annoyed that we're the worst defensive team in the Big 12. As far as rushing yards is concerned. And then I would almost say just period, because going into this weekend, we were the 14th overall in passing defense, and finishing the weekend, we were still 14th overall in passing defense. And we're still the worst in rushing defense and yards allowed. What I don't understand here is a couple of things. One, I get it. Nick Martin, Colin Oliver, Trey Rucker, all three of the best defensive players we have are out. And Colin Oliver's been missing since the second game, since Arkansas at halftime. So that one you can adjust to a little bit more. Trey Rucker is the safety who was getting the most amount of tackles on the team. And that's a problem for a couple of reasons, but the main one being the running backs or the quarterbacks or whoever was rushing the football was always getting all the way to the safety. Probably not great. Because the safety was leading your team in tackles. That's generally what you would want in a passing defense, but of course, everyone's been running it so prolifically all over the field, all over us, that it's definitely not what you want there either, right? And then the other thing is Nick Martin not being in the game. I understand he played maybe too long in the K-State game. That's where he gets injured. It's a bad loss, etc. But then again, like the guy is going for draft potential and for playing games and for getting more footage. Yes, you probably should have pulled him in hindsight, but you know what? We should also pull Garrett Rangel before he broke away for the 54-yard running, right, in hindsight. Or we shouldn't have, because then he rushes for that and it sparks momentum and then we're still in the game and all type of stuff. What is really nice from this game is that it looks like there is an offensive scheme going forward where we could have a running and mobile quarterback have a lot of success against a team in BYU that coming into that game had on average allowed 120 yards per game rushing. We rushed it for over 260 yards. Right. In fact, BYU had less rushing yards than we did. And that's the first game this season, except for the Tulsa game, where we had more rushing yards than the other team. So, time possession, Oklahoma State.
Yep.
Interceptions thrown. Oklahoma State had only 2. BYU had 3. I mean, penalties, we had 1 for 5 yards. They had 2 for 15. So we're really just negligible there.
I'm just glad that there wasn't that many, because usually college football lately has been just flag city, I feel like. But this one was weird where it was it just kept on going. There was no like officiating rules or anything like that, which was nice, especially for a late Friday night game.
Yeah, it wasn't really just prolonging it for just no reason at all, or just so the refs could have their voice and opinion in there. And then first downs, we had less, but third down efficiency wise, we're 9-13. I was like, hey man, we're rocking. I mean, there's some stuff to take away from this game, of course, that this is an undefeated BYU team who's 7-0, who last year was 5-7 to end season. And what are the big differences here? It seemingly means that BYU's hired a new offensive line coach, and there's not a bunch of other differences that I really see. They are just getting more experience. They do have a quarterback that's under center and seems really just confident in his ability, even when he throws 3 picks, right? That's or 2 picks, excuse me. But that just also what just seems crazy to me is that BYU was able to pull this one out. Normally coming into the Oklahoma State game, coming into Oklahoma State games, you would always go, these are the games we win, where yardage, it's close, overall yardage, penalties were similar, got one less mistake. We really had time possession, but we had the ball for like an 8-minute drive, right. I mean, to go down to score, to be up 3. And I've seen other people all over Twitter say, we've got a kicker problem. Our kicker missed 1 field goal from 48 yards. I'm not going to kill the college kicker over that.
I mean, our special teams have been pretty solid all year long. I'm going to give them that. I mean, I could at least sorry for cutting you off, but I mean, at least on our defense side, I was giving them the benefit of doubt because our offense was just always going 3 and out, so they're out there majority of the time. So I was giving them at least a little bit of benefit of doubt. It just, they didn't step up. Kind of like, I know the offense didn't have much to step up on, but at least offense showed up this time around.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, and great point, because right now as it stands, we've beat BYU 3 times out of the 4 times we've totally played. We have the overall record starting in 74. So really a couple bowl games and then these last 2 games, the last 2 years. But I guess the most annoying part about the game, of course, is the guy I feel the worst for, and that's Rangel. I mean, Garrett Rangel, he finished the game with 77 yards running the ball, and just 20 yards less than 30 yards less than Ollie Gordon.
I mean, so majority of them are also on the play that he got hurt on, though.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But I guess that's also what's odd to me is that like the game as Bowman was thrust into the game, had to play. He did make some bad plays. He did have some bad throws, but he put Oklahoma State in a position to win. So I'm not doom and gloom about Bowman. But with that being said, clearly the offense changes a ton once he's in the game.
It's scary how much it changes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess the one other good thing here is that we showed up in this game. This was not just an absolute complete, like you're saying earlier, not like, a Friday game where it's UCF last year or K-State the year before where we just don't even show up to play ball. So that was really nice as well too here. What were your main highlights away from, taken away from the game here as far as hey, you know what? At least there's this.
Right. My biggest concern, of course, is just the defense, because the last series, let's just talk about the last series itself. There's a 4th and 8, which BYU converts. that shouldn't have happened, to be honest with you. I know conversions of like 4th and 2 and that type of stuff, that's possible, but a 4th and 8, we got to at least step up a little bit harder on that. We just gave them free. And then, of course, the last play with like 15, 20 seconds left at the 35-yard line, it just felt like they were playing on the back of their heels, if that makes sense. Not really. It's not the defense that I'm used to seeing where they've been press man coverage and they're making sure that they're on there, dude. Like, you had to beat them back in the day, at least in some of our previous defenses. This time it just was so lax. I think it was just they played a zone coverage and just thought that would be the safest bet, but it did not work out in the end for us, as you can obviously tell. So that last series is a little concerning. So I'm sure defense is now really under the microscope because, I was at least giving them the benefit of the doubt like the past couple of weeks because, offense is just awful. So defense, I'm going to give them a grade of like an F, D plus maybe, just because, they at least, we're getting turnovers and that type of stuff, but we're still at, 38 points in a game. Still kind of high, still rushing is still not the best. Offense, I'm going to give a little bit. Well, it just depends on your offense. The Allen offense, I'm going to say that's probably a C, D range. The Rangel offense at least was, B. It was entertaining. We were actually ahead whenever he got out of the game, technically, yeah, I think we were about to score to be up one more, but regardless, we scored again. Ollie looked decent. He looked more like what he's been used to. Like he usually plays pretty well against BYU in general, because last year he got 5 overall touchdowns. This time he got 3. So, it does look better that he gets these touchdowns. I'm still worried about the offensive line, just because, we should have gotten a little bit more. And if we didn't have a quarterback scramble that got our quarterback hurt, if we didn't have that big 54-yard scramble, I think we wouldn't be beating and rushing. But of course, we did get that scramble, and it was a very good play. So that's my biggest takeaways, at least, is we need to definitely watch. And it was good that at least we made some progress on the bye week overall, which is good. I'm still questioning our coaches. I don't know. This is a funny thing that I saw. I've seen people say, like, at least on Mike Gundy himself, is like he's quiet quitting or whatever you want to say. I don't 100% agree with it, but I mean, it sometimes seems like that, He's not putting in his biggest effort.
Yeah, he really isn't. I mean, it's weird. It's almost like he's gone, you know what? This is just who we are. Like, there's not much more we can do. Like, just calling it, hey, you know what? We got out coached today in the post-game pressers and stuff. And it's like, well, sure, maybe you got out coached this week, but I'm fine with that excuse against Kyle Whittingham.
Right.
I'm not or even Satake, from BYU. He's been around a while. He's a very, very good coach for their program. Definitely coaches them much beyond their talent level, as I would say Gundy does. But okay, Colin Klein over at K-State, like, he's newer. I mean, I'm fine with it when it happens every so often, but this is 4 losses in a row, all in conference. Since Oklahoma State and BYU Oklahoma State and Utah played each other, which seems like forever ago because it was 110 degrees outside, and this past week at least it was kind of chilly. Neither has won a game since Utah walked away with that victory, of course. We're 0-4 in conference, and this is the first time since 2014 that Gundy's been under 500 this far in the season.
He just doesn't seem passionate. I don't know. I just don't see him passionate because, like, he would always get mad at certain calls. I've always recalled, like, him getting mad at, like, passer interference or something along those lines. I just haven't seen it this year. I don't know, like, if he's just lost his mojo or, once again, the quiet quitting funny thing. But it's just a little sad. And I get it. You've been here for a billion years, it feels like. So I'm sure there comes to a point of, like, it's just the same old, check in, check out, ready to go home type of thing.
Yeah, and maybe that's more than I could even imagine with it, but defensively, he hires Brian Nardo, and
Right.
I do not actually have an issue with the man himself whatsoever, or the defensive job he's done coaching him this season. I do have an issue with the scheme, though.
Yes.
Because the scheme of the 3-3-5, you're not stopping the run with the 3-3-5, and you're introducing these 4 other teams in the conference that, yes, Arizona is perfectly a passing team.
Right.
Arizona State, they have maybe the best rusher on their team in the, I'm not going to say country, but second best in Scattaboo. He's really good. He is their dude at this point. Their offensive system is literally him, because Arizona State's quarterback got knocked down not this past game, but the week before.
Right.
And then we're talking about Cincinnati. Well, you never know. I mean, West Virginia, I definitely remember them much more for the run and gun than anything else. But of course, we've been playing with them in the conference since 2012-ish or something close to that. So it's been a while. I just think about all these, right? Like Colorado is the 4th one I haven't mentioned here besides Arizona State, Utah. And who knows what we're going to get with them with Deion Sanders. I think we're going to be able to run the ball really well against them. That's the nice part, because they're also down here with us kind of in the running defense part of it, in yards allowed. But they're actually doing not as bad as I thought they were. But with that being said, we're allowing the most amount of yards per game against us. We're almost allowing 500 yards. And through 7 games, we're allowing 490.6 yards a game. And 2 of our games were against teams that are not in Power 5 conferences.
Yeah. Tulsa and South Dakota State. Woo!
South Dakota State, they might be really good. I'm fine with that. Tulsa is abysmal. Tulsa, the Tulsa guys I had on the podcast earlier this year, they're out here tweeting out stuff like, maybe let's go hire the coach from Owasso, the high school, because they are literally at this point where they're like, I don't know who we're going to get. Like, I've not felt this desolate in a while. We put up 45 points on them and they scored 10. Mm-hmm. And yet we're still we're allowing 500 more yards total in the season so far than any other team in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Like, I can go through, I can be like, you know what, Iowa State, they got an easy schedule this year, whatever. But they at least have played Iowa in the non-con. We played Arkansas. I'm willing to kind of go back and forth with all these stats and really dig through them and go, well, you know what? Some are bad, some are great, some are, whatever. But like, most amount of yards allowed passing wise, Texas Tech. Cincinnati put up like 59 points on them this weekend. And we'll get to them in a second here. But West Virginia and us are like 12 yards apart. And I don't know about you and what you think, but West Virginia is allowing a half of the amount of rush yards we are. Right. So if West Virginia is allowing a couple more yards, passing it through the air than they are rushing it, that's fine. I would also just rather have one Big 12 win. And none of these games so far have felt like, to me, except for this game Friday night, have felt reasonably achievable. Yeah, just like we were in the game all the way until the end. This is the first game, so I feel better about that. But like, man, this sucks,
I mean, yes, the Utah game, we did get it close, but we only showed up in the 4th quarter, and they didn't have their starter quarterback, and we now know kind of how Utah is right now because they don't have their starter. So it just like, overall, the season's been, I feel like, a true disappointment, because I could have seen us, I don't know if it's just because we just didn't know the portal system very well, or we're just getting out coached, or Gundy's not passionate. I don't know what it is, but it just feels very underwhelming, considering that we should be, in theory, if you look at our schedule at the beginning of the year, we should be, right up there. It just doesn't make any sense of like, we came back with a very veteran quarterback, and he just feels like it's rushed. So I don't know if it's just because we just have a new offensive line overall, or there's just too many like question marks.
Offensive line as last year.
Is it? Oh, okay. So then
this offensive line is the oldest offensive line in either college football or the Big 12 or both. And clearly it would be both if it's all college football. But I'm with you though on the head scratching part of it, because to only echo what you're saying, it is like something's up. It is like something that's like happened before the season started where we went, oh, what's going on? And there are several plays in the BYU game where I'm like, Alan Bowman, when he's dropping back to hand the ball off, he's going to the wrong side, or as part of the play action,
or the whole entire offensive line. Do you remember that play where they all just hit down on the ground? I was just like, what are we doing?
Alan Bowman at one point, I think, was 0 of 5 passing the football and had thrown a pick and had 2 rushes for 17 yards and a touchdown receiving. It just, I mean, it's like constantly we're getting tweeted. Oklahoma State's getting tweeted about from the Reddit college football account because they're like, well, the Oklahoma State good turn up this quarter or Oklahoma State bad turn up this quarter. And it's true. It's a good point. But I'd say maybe we have one quarter a game where we show up and we're like playing extremely good. And then like a stat will come back from halftime. This stat really caught my eye. It was Oklahoma State for the past 3 games before the BYU game had not allowed a score in the third quarter. And I was like, well, hey, you know what? We're making some defense. We're making some adjustments in the halftime. We're doing all stuff, whatever. And then we allowed BYU to score literally 2 touchdowns in the third quarter. So it's like, I mean, even when we think we're, it's like, oh, crap. We're not even there. Then I want to bring this to a Gundy discussion because you and I have been Oklahoma State fans since birth? I mean, pretty much, right? Like
Yep.
We both knew we were going to Oklahoma State. We knew that's what it was going to be. There's nowhere else we were going to go. We were like born, bred, and bought into this university, right? We've worked for it. We have sweated it out. We've driven
Literally
probably a little bit too fast back to work games, and stuff from Oklahoma City, from working together in Oklahoma City to Stillwater back and forth, all type of stuff here. So I want to ask you about Gundy here and kind of build this larger point. So I said 10 years ago, right? 2014, Oklahoma State finished the year 7-6. The bright spot at the end of the season was Mason Rudolph came in and then we beat Baylor, OU, and then won the bowl game. So
right.
That being said here, the next closest season we have to that one, as far as like record wise, is 2 years ago, 2022, the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. In between there, we have, a 2018 team that's like not great, but won 7 games. But in between 2014 to 2018, won 10 games 3 years in a row. Then 2018 to 2022, we won 8 games, 12 games,
Woo!
And the Fiesta Bowl, and then 7-6. And then last year we won 10 games. And now this season, right now, we're looking at a year where I gotta be honest, if we do win 3 more games, I will not be shocked. If we don't win 3 more games, I will also not be shocked. I'm kind of in the middle here. Baylor playing Cincinnati and actually blowing their doors off at their place.
Yeah. And we're going to Baylor.
And almost putting up 60 points. And then we got to go to Baylor this weekend. Not feeling great. Arizona State, I feel a bit better about just because they did not show up at all this weekend. So maybe they're not that good.
Mm-hmm.
Texas Tech, of course, did not show up this weekend either because I think actually Baylor beat Tech this weekend. Excuse me. So Baylor beat Tech this weekend at their place and beat them like that. So I'm not feeling like bad about Tech. And then we play Colorado, so I mean, and then we also, there's just, I see a possibility here, but point being,
yeah, I'm glad you see the possibility.
yeah, because I see it. I don't love it, but I see it. Point being here, will this be the worst Gundy season in your mind at the end of the year? Because to me, the answer is easy.
Yeah.
Yes, because the expectations were so high, and there was not a reason in the world not to expect us to be currently sitting at least with 2 wins so far coming into tonight, coming into this week. Like losing Utah and K-State preseason, I talked about that possibility happening.
Right.
Let's finish with 10 wins, but losing 2 games like there and being like, hey, you know what? Hopefully the tiebreakers work our way to bigger than the Big 12 championship. But losing both those, I did not see a chance at all that we would lose all 4 to start out the Big 12 conference. So I'll stop and I'll ask you. I mean, where does this rank here?
So definitely because, we had such a great season last year. Let's just be honest. And everybody's basically returning for the most part. Like we got the key, Allen got his approval with the NCAA. So, he was doing pretty good last year, pretty good quarterback. Not like nothing like an A status, but at least, something to look out for. And then, Ollie, to be honest with you, everybody was hyping him up to be a, like a Heisman candidate, at the beginning of the season. So overall, I was like, man, we're going to be at least, 2 or 3 in the standings. I feel like at least trying to make it into a Big 12 championship game. But then it's just been pure disappointment because even like the Arkansas game, like we didn't show up until the very end, and we just got extremely lucky that Arkansas led us into the fourth quarter to even go into the double overtimes. And fun facts about you, and I'm going to tie this all out. So Arkansas beat Tennessee. Tennessee beat OU. So in theory, we beat OU. We won Bedlam this year, right?
I like it. I'll take it. That seems like a win in my book.
I mean, considering how they got blown out by South Carolina, I feel pretty good right now about that if we were to play them. But yes, overall, this season, like, I didn't feel like the Big 12 was that loaded, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't feel like we would have much competition, at least at the beginning of the year. It didn't look like, at least on paper, did not look like we had much competition, and we should have been cruising through the Big 12. I mean, we had most of the games pretty favorable. It's just the BYU one, which everybody kind of like, don't know if we're going to win that one. But I just, it's sad and disappointing in my overall. This is probably one of the worst. But now the sad thing is we come off this bye week and we actually look good. So I feel a little bit better, but it just depends on what team shows up. That's our problem, is none of the teams every single week it's just been so inconsistent. Like, we've had years where we played to the opponent, which makes sense. We've had years that we overshone, we actually played decent and that type of stuff. This year, it's just like all over the place. We just don't know what's going to show up, which is, I feel like, worse in my book. Cause like, we have sometimes where, obviously it's not the biggest opponent, but we're playing Tulsa and we look phenomenal. It looks perfect. But then, and like, yeah, the Arkansas game was a little stressful, but we didn't know how good Arkansas was back then. And we just actually got to accept those opportunities whenever it gave to us. And then, then we have those 3-game losing streaks of Utah, Kansas State, and West Virginia. And that we just don't even look like we're even in the building. We didn't even show up. We brought the JV team out, it feels like. But then we go against BYU and we actually look pretty decent. We probably should have won that game if it wasn't for the last 15 seconds. So, I mean, it's just, I will admit, probably the hardest season to watch. And I've seen a lot of seasons where it's been hard to watch. It's just this one, it just feels extra hard to watch for whatever reason. It just doesn't feel like we're passionate, and that's the hardest part about this. Is like, at least the other years it was just like a stupid coaching mistake, or we're doing a stupid quarterback draw or a draw up the middle, and that was just like the plays themselves. Yeah, it worked sometimes, but 90% of the time it didn't. This year, it just, nobody looks passionate about the game, and that's the part that frustrates me the most about this is just the team overall's mentality. At least they showed a little bit of life, at least this last game, but I don't know if it's going to continue because now we have Allen back and or Bowman. Everybody I like to call him Allen. But he didn't bring any life to us.
We know you and Allen, you're so close in age. You guys must be great friends. You got on a first name basis. I'm with you. When 5 years from now, I will not know how to explain this season. That'll be the main thing here I'm thinking about. Like,
it's like COVID, it's like COVID.
Yeah.
You're like, what was COVID? Oh, well, it was the weirdest time ever. I like how we have to explain that 4 years later. This is the Cowboy football team of COVID. We just don't know what they are.
Oh yeah. The team that historically finished 8-5, or 8-3, but only played 11 games and won the Cheez-It Bowl. Like, I kind of almost forget that entire game. Yeah. I mean, it's just that entire year. A rate that indicates, let's see here, the strength of schedule here, at least, that year is 4.92. This year just 1.33. So
I knew our schedule was pretty weak because,
well, and 0 is average. Just to give everyone kind of a heads up here. This is the easiest schedule we've had, strength of schedule wise, since 2006.
And we're blowing it.
And and that year we finished 7-6 too. But we're blowing it. I don't know. I don't know. I'm really hopeful that the NIL stuff will be better for our two deep, not for our top line here, because here's the thing. I have talked with several Oklahoma State fans, including a previous podcast guest here, about this. I do not think the NIL stuff will mean great things for Oklahoma State. Like if all of a sudden, let's say we had another Boone Pickens type of guy just come in and be like, hey, I'm willing just to literally put down $100 million a year on NIL and do whatever you need to do to renovate the place, to do whatever you need to do, right? I don't think that would help out Oklahoma State that much. Like we're not in the SEC, we're not in the Big Ten. So automatically the 5-star guys are probably looking other places. And they also have found other places, guys with other places with other pockets. But what I am hoping here is that means that and I'm not trying to pick on this guy at all. In fact, he played an incredibly great game. He led the team in tackles in Parker Robertson, but he's a former walk-on. And it just looked like he was that final play of the game, right? They're talking about like 3 missed tackles. Yeah. And if we just, we get the ball back with 7 seconds left. So if we just tackle the guy, does that also, and they're out of timeouts. So does that just mean that we win the game, or does that mean they have to run on and kick a field goal and
they would have to at least
we go to overtime or so? I don't know. Maybe they're down it and they run the field goal team on and they kick a field goal and we're in overtime and we lose in overtime. Like there's millions of different things that can happen. My point being here is that I would at least hope the NIL stuff that's going on with Oklahoma State having a concert series of $3 million plus, in NIL money, which in case anyone doesn't know, I used to work in ticket sales, so I know this very well. Until the concerts happen and then another 90 days pass, the money is not liquid. So the NIL money is all coming. But it all has to keep coming. Like if there's rain out, or if there's, the band that got back together after having a 10-year hiatus disbands again, and people, all that just still has to go through. So what I want to say is, I love that we're thinking of creative and fun ways to try to get NIL
like
money.
The QR code on the back of the helmets at the beginning of the season. That was very unique, and I will appreciate that. So he was trying. And, of course, we would get it shut down, of course, because everybody in the NCAA just says, oh, it's OSU, smack.
Hammer, right, immediately. I mean, it's just kind of funny. But, I love that part about it. But I really hope what that means is that in 2 years from now, when it's, hey, gosh, man, what is going on with the Oklahoma State team? They can now play defense. Oh, well, they're missing 3 starters. It just means that the backups were also 3-star guys. Right. It's nothing against the walk-ons. They have a place in college football. They are awesome. Sometimes they play way better than the starters. Heck, Taylor Cornelius. That was one of the more fun seasons we ever seen. He was a walk-on for how many years? And then got to be the starter for a full season before Spencer Sanders came in. Yep. That was awesome. There's so many stories like that are awesome. So it's not against those guys. It's just saying, I hope Oklahoma State having more NIL money than previously having it. And that's the only difference here. I'm not saying comparatively to other universities. I'm just saying having more NIL money than previously will raise all of the talent level. It will afford us the ability to keep guys here that may go, hey man, I can transfer to go play for another Big 12 team here, make some more money and still be a backup. Why wouldn't I go transfer to K-State and just make a little bit more money in my pocket, or Iowa State or BYU or whatever, right? So I'd hope that'd be it. And I bring this up here because I go, man, who's behind Ollie Gordon, right? All right. Because I'll where's the tweet, Calvin? Well, I'll show the tweet here. So Coach Wozniak, the running back coach for Oklahoma State, showed this. And if you are watching on YouTube, thank goodness, please keep watching on YouTube. But I do want to say that's where I'm sharing the tweet of the photo of Coach Wozniak whispering or kind of at least maybe yelling during the game into Ollie's ears. And he tweeted out this photo here on the 19th at 6 p.m. So a whole day after the game had gone over. And all the comments are just, oh, please tell me this isn't Ollie leaving, more or less.
I could see it because, he is putting out everything. He's literally jumping over players and we still lose. So I could see him wanting to at least back out or just declare for the draft because, people like to do that. I don't think this season has helped his draft stock because he thought he could at least be higher up this season because, you would think everybody's returning. But I definitely think it is a weird photo. It does make me a little worried, but I think overall we should be fine. I think he'll play the rest of the season, but I don't think he'll play in the bowl game.
Oh, that's a thought. That's a thought. Maybe I honestly don't think he'll.
If we get to a bowl game,
I don't think he'll play in the bowl game regardless. Honestly, that's a good point. What I'm really curious about though is I heard a lot of names coming into this season as far as running backs that could also play for Oklahoma State. Sessi Valahi, Trent Rowland. I never heard of Rodney Fields, and it just I've been doing this podcast deal. We've been doing this since 10 years, right? I mean maybe 9. We've been doing at least a radio show deal where they're all on the YouTube page here if you're following. You can go back and see the Calvin Glen radio show, at least the first ones in the live podcast playlist. It's back there. So all this is to say, Rodney Fields, listen, he could be the next Ollie Gordon, or heck, I'm not going to say he couldn't be the next Derrick Henry, although he doesn't look like him at all whatsoever from the Stanford profile. He could be the next Reggie Bush. Let's just throw out like a recent name that everyone knows for well. That's not just a great running back cover. He's not Barry Sanders. No one ever will be. But with that being said, he's still his first snaps of football ever in collegiate were to get a first down in a pivotal moment for Oklahoma State because Ollie went out for a couple minutes because he was stumbling. There's stuff like that where I'm like, well, I'd hope we could have someone else besides that guy be in for that play. You know what I mean? And just have that other stuff here. So I don't know. Let's talk a little bit though about, with all that being said, about the backups and other guys who could play. Let's talk about who could play here this weekend here in Waco, Texas. It's your Oklahoma State Cowboys going against the now one win in the conference Baylor Bears here, which just finished the Butt Bowl, the Baylor University versus Texas Tech University game. So Trey, who you got and why?
This is gonna be hard. I think Baylor's gonna edge out just because, at least offensive wise, they have offense. Unfortunately, they actually have offense compared to us. So at least as far as they have a good overall passing yards per game, about 235, and then rushing is only 152. But I feel like that doubles with us because our defense just cannot stop the run whatsoever. So that's the only down part. So I feel like it just depends if our offense shows up again, because it's just a totally different beast whenever Bowman's on the field. So I still feel like Baylor's going to win this one, and I'm going to go with the score of, let's see, they've been in the 40s lately, so I'm going to go with 49-35 Baylor. That's what I'm going with.
Man, that is a lot of points. But Baylor just put up 59 on a team that is
true
better defensively statistically than Oklahoma State here. So I'll give them that. Oklahoma State wise, in the previous 5 games here, going back all the way to the Tulsa game, we have allowed 35 points, we've allowed 38 points, then 38 points, then 42 points, then 22 to Utah, and then we won the game against Tulsa, so we only allowed 10. I feel like Baylor on the other hand here has scored 59, then 21 against Iowa State, 28 against BYU, 31 against Colorado, and then 31 against Air Force Academy. I feel like no matter what, Baylor scores 40s or 50s here. Right. So I'm going to say a little bit less here because it's a home game. Maybe Baylor just puts in the backups at some point here. But I'm also hoping Oklahoma State wins. I mean, right now the spread is Baylor favored by 4. The over-under is 64.5, though. So I do think this is a high-scoring game, higher than the last game, at least prediction-wise, because last game's predicted was in the 50s. This is in the 60s. I'm going to say this is Baylor barely, though. And I almost want to say 38-35, just like last week. Yeah. Because it just seems like something like that would happen again, where it'd be a close game all the way to the end, and Baylor ends up pulling it out. But I'm actually, I'll say 42-35. That's a conventional college football score, just only touchdowns. That's a little bit easier math-wise for me too here, because we all know I'm not the greatest at math. I also want to say here, Baylor, I just don't think they're that bad. they're not great,
Right.
but so far
lost to Colorado.
Well, they lost to Colorado, but Colorado could be good. I mean, Colorado right now they're 3-1 in conference. They're 5-2 overall. They got boat raced by Nebraska at Nebraska, who lost horrifically this past weekend.
Right.
But maybe that was early on in the season kind of lost deal when they're figuring it out a little bit more. I don't know, because this Baylor team has their first winning conference, but they have, besides the Iowa State loss, they've lost their combined last, their other two games they've lost this year in the Big 12 are by a combined, 6 and then 7 points, so 13. I mean, yeah, it's math. BYU, they played BYU at home and they lost by 6. Yeah. And they play Colorado at Colorado and they lose by 7 on one of the craziest stuff to end the game you've ever seen.
That was insane.
So Baylor should have had at least 2 wins in conference because they have 1 right now. Mm-hmm. And throttling a Texas Tech team that I think had only lost 1 game this whole season coming into that one. Just seems weird. I mean, Texas Tech got their first conference loss to Baylor and their own place and by just a ton of points. So, yeah, it's tough for me to pick against Baylor here. And, it's a ESPN Plus game. So at least it won't be on national television that we'll be seeing this. Because that's tough when we're on national TV and we don't play well. I just, I'll say this as well here too. Their quarterback for Baylor here, Sawyer Robertson, 3 interceptions on the year. Alan Bowman, 9 on the season.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty bad.
Oh yeah,
pretty bad overall here.
Very bad. And he's got to play too. We can't go to our backup.
Well, yeah, we don't have.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess the freshman just didn't travel. The freshman redshirt that was.
Zane Flores did not travel, but also apparently had season-ending surgery. I'm not going to I don't know exactly what, honestly. He had season-ending surgery. We know that.
Right. So
I believe on a lower extremity like an ankle, but I'm not sure.
So if Bowman's out, we're going to just do Wildcat with Ollie?
One would hope. At Malachi Smith, that's how you say it, though. If you look at it, it's tough to figure out that's the way you pronounce it. But Malachi Smith, he's 6'4" freshman out of Sacramento, California, and he was warming up on the sideline with Bowman and with Rangel this past weekend. This last Friday night. So, I mean, it's just that's also tough. Like if Bowman goes out, man, then all of a sudden we've got a guy who's just being tossed in here who has no news available from ESPN, whose stats are he's a freshman and he's active and he's 6'4", 185, and everything else is like.
I'm sure he's trying to keep his red shirt.
Oh, I would bet your bottom dollar there's no way we're not. I mean, the other guy to put out there is Garrett Wilson, who I believe is a walk-on. He's out of Edmond, Oklahoma. He's a freshman, but I believe he's a walk-on here. So, and Zane Flores he's also a freshman, but he's a redshirt freshman this year. So maybe it's gonna be medical and stuff. You'd always rather have more quarterbacks than not, but where was the Rangel hype earlier this year? Like coming into the season, you can't play Rangel over Bowman. You cannot. You just can't. But I do now. I put out a podcast earlier this year where I was like, why in the heck did Rangel play? Why did Rangel play in the second half of the Utah game? And this past weekend at least answered those questions for me. Like, okay, he does show a little bit different type of mobility. He for sure can run the ball a lot better.
He's fast. He's
fast. He's dynamic. He in fact is actually quick enough that when Bowman came in for him, the other team was like, oh, you're putting Alan Bowman. We're actually going to disrespect you so much that Alan Bowman had a 12-yard rush. Yep. So like that's how much of the Rangel flip to Bowman the other team thought there was of how much of a difference. It's like, oh, Bowman, he's never running the ball. And he gained 12 yards on a play.
Yep.
So, which I mean, might be his career high in rushing yards. I don't think it is. I think we had that against OU actually.
Yeah, I think he had a big one.
Play. But yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough. I do think this The one similarity here is this BYU team we just played. Gary Bohannon also used to play for Baylor. Weirdly enough, he's been around the world here a little bit as a backup, but that's the only thing I have here really correlating between the two schools here from BYU and Baylor. This Baylor team is not bad, like I said. They're definitely a team here that I'm going. There won't be an easy win. They're also 3-4 on the season. They had one non-conference loss is the key difference here overall. But that non-conference loss was to, do you want to take a guess? It's Power 4 school. It was also in the Big 12 because it was scheduled before this season. It's Utah. They lost to Utah this year. In fact, it's the game Cam Rising hurt his finger in.
Oh, that's that game. Oh.
So Baylor and Utah had a non-conference game earlier this season that was, of course, non-conference, but they're in the same conference now. And Arizona and Kansas State also the same deal, a non-conference game against each other earlier this year. That weirdly enough is classified as non-conference. But with all that being said, Baylor could be bad. I don't know. Texas Tech could have just not played anyone, and then Baylor plays them, and they haven't played anyone, etc. And that's it. And that's all she wrote. Texas Tech's win so far this season have been Abilene Christian University by 1 point to open up the season. Then North Texas, then Arizona State by 8, which I thought was good. Cincinnati by 3, which again I'm confused. Arizona by 6, which again,
I'm confused.
Confused. But I mean, at least Tech has to come to Stillwater for senior day. And we've got one heck of a lot of seniors. So I'm hopeful for that one here coming on later on the season, of course. And then as we look for the rest of the season, what's your final kind of win prediction here? We've got, I'm just going to lay it out.
Yep.
Got 5 games left.
Yep.
At Baylor this Saturday, Arizona State at home for homecoming, at TCU, Texas Tech at home for senior day, and then at Colorado on a Friday night. Excuse me. Yeah. At 11 a.m. though.
Ooh, yeah, they already.
It's definitely on a Friday. I know. I remember that. It's
I think that's
I
think that's Black Friday, or that's Black Friday. Yeah.
Yep.
So Baylor, I think we're gonna lose. Arizona State, we are technically favored, so I feel like we could win that one. At TCU, I think we're gonna lose because we usually just don't play very well in the road. Tech, we are favored, so I think we're gonna win that one. So we're at 2 wins at least on my prediction, and I don't think we're gonna win against Colorado. So I don't think we're making it to a bowl game, which is mind blowing. But it's just how it's looking right now. Unless we pull 180 somehow, at least everything that's been shown to me right now, I don't think we're gonna win 3 games this year, which is going to be devastating.
Yeah, if the bowl streak ends with this season,
with the easiest season that we supposedly have had,
strength of schedule wise, it's great. Strength schedule so far through the season, so that is subject to change here. I am pulling all of these stats here from collegefootballreference.com or sportsreference.com/collegefootballreference, whatever you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not perfect. I will give them that. But the ranking we had coming into the season was 17th.
Mm-hmm.
And the ranking we had coming into the 2022 season was 12th. We finished 7-6 that year. The ranking we had coming into let's see here. I'm trying to look at another 7-6 season here, just real quick here. But basically a lot of seasons that we have with Gundy where we're expected to be, preseason ranking really good. We either finished better than that, like 2016, we were predicted to be 21st preseason ranking, and we ended up being our highest was 10th, and we ended up finishing 11th. So there's just a lot of differences that can happen here. And Gundy always seems to outperform when the expectations are bad, but underperform when the expectations are good. And leave it with this thought here. Seth Luttrell, the OU offensive coordinator, has been let go 7 games into the season this year. OU is not playing up to their standards at all.
Not at all.
Whatsoever. But then again, this is a year where they have a Jackson Arnold who was not the starter last year and was definitely going to be a transition year. For any Oklahoma State fan to defend Casey Dunn of staying with the team is going to be just, either way,
if it's for a while.
well, but if it's, I've I've talked to enough fans where I go, man, on one hand, it's, hey, Dunn's the worst. He sucks. We got to get him out. And on the other hand, well, is it really Dunn, or is it Gundy just hamstringing him and playing conservative once the game gets close or doesn't go the right way? And I got to be honest here. Something has to change. We cannot run the 3-3-5 in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. It's just not working out. Maybe we'll next year. I'm not willing to say, hey, Nardo's got to go, but we got to change defensive schemes. We're allowing way too much of secondary help, having to help out the first line defense. And on the other hand, offensively, what a bye week made the whole difference in the whole offensive scheme and really changed a bunch of stuff and new quarterback and everything. It looked like a huge glimmer of hope, but it looks like we're going to be back to what we've been seeing earlier this season. I don't know how we play the same way with Bowman that we played with Rangel to start the game. And
I don't think we have that motivation again, which we got the team just looks totally different under Bowman, which is weird because we had him last year and we look decent. Yeah.
The one thing I will always question here is, how is a running game so good last year with Bowman at the helm? First 3 games, he wasn't at the helm. Whatever. 4th game, he just started Iowa State, whatever, it's their place, etc. The rest of the season, Bowman looked pretty darn decent or pretty darn good. And who knows how the rest of this season is going to go on, because it's rough. It's rough. But with that being said, here, Trey, thanks so much for joining on the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. If you're not already, please follow Trey here. To get more of his thoughts, news, and opinions on Oklahoma State football and everything else in the entire world. And then follow at the CGA Tour here on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you're listening to podcasts, and subscribe on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will catch you again soon. Peace.